Something that's been concerning a number of people lately is the new renegotiated NAFTA trade agreement. Does it give away too much to Big Pharma? That's a question a lot of people are asking. And my go-to person for trade questions, I always follow what she has to say, is Lori Wallach. Lori is the director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch program. She's been tracking and or participating in these processes of congressional trade battles and negotiations for a number of years now, and I find her perspective illuminating and helpful. So she has agreed to join us once again to discuss this aspect of the NAFTA 2.0 agreement, and she joins us now. Lori, thanks so much for coming back on the program.
Thank you very much.
And the question I asked in the introduction, does this deal give away too much to the drug companies?
So here's the situation. The renegotiated NAFTA that Trump signed the end of last year did some things that Progressive asked for, but Trump let Big Pharma rig the intellectual property chapter of the agreement to put in place policies that would lock in high U.S. medicine prices. If this agreement were implemented as is with these terms intact, this and future Congresses basically would have their hands tied from rolling back the monopolies that Big Pharma now uses to block competition from generics and to keep U.S. medicine prices unacceptably high. So it's a problem that needs to get fixed.
So, and this, I think, is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I have a feeling, and I think you just confirmed it for me, that the ramifications of this, as important as trade deals are in every aspect, and they are, that the ramifications of this for American users of the healthcare system, for American society, could be very profound, right? Because we have a drug pricing crisis in this country. Everybody essentially knows it. You know, working class folks know it and live with it every day. Seniors know it. Policymakers know it. Economists know it. And I think what you're saying, Lori Wallach, is that this deal, if enacted as it has presently been negotiated, would really tie our hands in what we could do to get control of that problem.
That's right. So no matter what you think about trade agreements, and there are Democrats who have different views, the one thing that I have seen in Congress is that members of Congress have come to realize that whatever they think about the NAFTA trade piece, they can't live with having stuck into the middle of the agreement these special protections for Big Pharma, because the dirty little secret about these trade agreements is they all contain a set of rules that more or less say every country has to make all of their domestic laws and regulations fit within the rules set in the trade agreement, including those that have nothing to do with trade. So, in this agreement that's supposed to be about free trade are a bunch of protections for one set of industries, pharmaceutical companies. For instance, every government who signs the agreement, and that would be the U.S., so U.S. Congress would be bound, states would be bound, they would be required to guarantee for Big Pharma both special 10-year exclusivity protections where even if there weren't a patent, which is a license to have private sales of something, even without a license like that, for 10 years, a pharmaceutical company would have exclusive right to sell what are called biologic medicines. And those are the cutting-edge cancer drugs, the anti-inflammatories a lot of people take, increasing vaccines. Those are the most expensive medicines, the ones that are $100,000 and more a year. Of all things, the number of years of monopoly for the pharmaceutical companies needs to go down, not get locked in. Plus, the agreement has in it other rules that say every country who signs this trade agreement has to guarantee the pharmaceutical corporations all kinds of ways to extend their patents. They have to get new monopoly rights if they find a second use for a chemical they already had a patent on. They have to have a new monopoly right if there's any delay in the approval, because like their testing has to be double checked for safety, oh, then you get extra years of patent on top of the patent you normally get. Or, if you combine this drug and another drug, both have patents, new thing that's combined, new patent. And the patents, of course, block generic competition, keep the prices high. So this is a whole swamp of special protections for pharma stuck in a so-called free trade agreement. The only good news is Mexico and Canada never wanted these provisions. This not only would lock in the bad policies we have in the U.S., it would export those bad policies to Mexico and Canada. So this is a part of this agreement that's very easy to fix, because Mexico and Canada would be very happy not to have to raise their medicine prices to the ridiculous U.S. levels.
Well, there's so much in what you just said. I just want to recap first, or highlight a couple points. One is that you said they can extend these protections, which are essentially in many cases the U.S. government giving them a monopoly on a life-saving product and allowing them to charge whatever they want. They can extend them, for example, if they find a new use or combine it with another chemical. For anyone who doesn't know, this is the oldest trick in the book for pharmaceutical companies, is figuring out a new use and applying for that to extend their patents, or combining it with something else to extend their patents. If you really research it, there are a lot of cases where this has been done really to abuse the patent process, which is already too generous to begin with. So that's very important, because it makes it impossible for us, at least in the context of these biologics, to change that. So that's super important. But the fact that the other two signatories don't like this provision, it was, I guess, forced on them by the U.S., is a good sign, because you and I have talked about this NAFTA 2.0 so-called agreement before, and I think for some of us who consider ourselves not non-supporters of Donald Trump, it can create a certain cognitive dissonance, because there are things in this renegotiated NAFTA that are actually better from a progressive point of view, right? I mean, there are certain provisions that cars, for example, have to be 40% assembled in a country where there's a $16, workers make at least $16 an hour. I'm trying to think of some of the others, but
got rid of investor state dispute settlement, which is huge. It got rid of the mandatory natural resources export language, which is a big deal. There are things that are worth harvesting if we can get this terrible pharma stuff out.
So what is a viable political path forward on this? This is what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe you can help us here. This has been negotiated. There's a provision that's unpopular. We don't want this treaty ratified as is, right? Because it's because of this horrible pharma provision. Could we, for example, encourage the Senate to say we will only ratify it if this provision is removed? Is there a scenario whereby the Trump administration can be pressured / persuaded to drop this provision and come back with a new draft that doesn't include it for ratification? What could happen next in a good scenario?
So first of all, the agreement doesn't go as a treaty. It's a simple majority vote of the House and the Senate. And so what basically has already happened is the House of Representatives, the Democrats being a majority, have made pretty clear. In fact, the guy who is generally a pro-trade agreement guy, who's the chair of the Trade Committee, has said he doesn't think the agreement would get through with this pharma stuff in it, given the Democratic majority. So then what happens is what's happened to about half of our past trade agreements that had already been signed. And then when a president, Democratic or Republican, goes to Congress and realizes, oh, I don't have a majority, I can't pass this agreement the way I signed it, they go and change small pieces of it. And typically they take bad stuff out. So as it happened, exactly this scenario has happened in the past. When the Democrats took the majority in the midterm elections in 2006, then President Bush II had signed a bunch of agreements in April of 2006 that had this terrible pharma stuff in it, high medicine prices. And the Democrats said, not so fast. We are now the majority in 2007. You have to fix this. And it's called the May 10th agreement. Basically, the president then, Bush, went back to Peru and Colombia and Panama, where the countries that they'd signed agreements with. And they said, listen, can't get it through Congress the way it is. Let's agree to just take out these special protections for big pharma. Let's add some labor and environmental stuff. Then that agreement came to Congress and got passed. And it's done basically through a little bit of extra post facto negotiating. The agreement effectively gets amended in a very narrow way. It's not all opened up, but some things get cleaned up. And then the revised agreement goes to Congress. And if Congress says up front, the House, the Democrats, that's our job to make sure the Democrats are unified and say, we're not going to pass something that ties our hands as far as locking in high medicine prices. You got to take that stuff out. Then the administration will take it out.
Well, the process, as you described it, for the last agreement under President Bush, it sounds like representative democracy functioning more or less as it should. So that part is good. I guess my question for you now, Lori Wallach, is do we have any indication that the current Congress is willing to, I mean, we have the same speaker we had back then, is the current Congress willing to do something similar now? Is there any indication, pro or con? Are there holdouts? Do people need to pressure Congress? Where are we exactly?
Well, I think it's really important that everyone talks to their member of the House of Representatives, they're Democrats. There are some instruments going around. There's a big sign-on letter going around right now that's trying to get lots of Democrats on it that says, hey, whatever you think about trade, we're not going to live with this big pharma stuff. It has to come out. So asking members of Congress to make sure that the revised NAFTA deal doesn't have these big pharma giveaways, that gets taken out before the deal goes to Congress is super important. And the thing that's a little scary is the very top Democrat in the House, the chairman of the Trade Committee, is a guy named Richard Neal. He's one of the top recipients of pharma lobbying money. And he just yesterday said something that contradicts the speaker, contradicts everyone else. He said, I'm not sure we should open up this agreement. Well, the only way to get the pharma stuff is to open it up, which is what other members of Congress are calling for, including people on his committee. So I think probably we will have to see, but the leadership of the Democrats, as well as each member, need to hear that whatever you think of trade, this big pharma stuff can't be in there. The Democrats got elected promising to lower medicine prices. So certainly Democrats can't be for a trade agreement, even if they're generally for bad trade agreements. They can't be for a trade agreement that takes away their ability to bring down big pharma's outrageous prices. That's a recipe to have a one-term Democratic majority in the House.
So what can people do to educate their member of Congress, or to, if their member of Congress is already on board, pump them up a little bit, with the understanding that the public is not going to stand for having their Democratic Congress ratify a generous giveaway to the drug companies that's going to hurt the health of the American people?
The easiest thing that they can do is just, if literally they see their member of Congress over the next couple of weeks, just to say, hey, have you gotten on that big sign-on letter that's going around amongst the Democrats saying, whatever you think about trade, the big pharma stuff has to come out of the renegotiated NAFTA. If you're not signed on to that letter, we're going to assume you're on the side of big pharma. Every Democrat needs to be on that letter, whatever you think about trade. And they should just ask their member of Congress, sign on to that letter. Everyone knows what that letter is. It's a letter that's going to go to the administration that says this needs to get fixed. Democrats who aren't on it are on the wrong side. They're for big pharma. They're for high medicine prices. They're against us. So everyone should make sure their members are on the letter that says can't have an NAFTA revision come to Congress unless the pharma stuff is out.
So, and then the other thing I guess people need to do is maybe if you're a constituent of Richie Neal's, I think you might want to let him know you're not happy with the way he's talking about this thing.
Friends in Massachusetts, please talk to your Congressman Richard Neal. He does seem to be barking up the wrong tree in the last 24 hours.
Well, we will stay on him, and we will stay on this story. And as always, Lori Wallach, Director of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch, thanks for your insights on this, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for keeping people on top of this incredibly important issue that is so much bigger than trade. Richard, you're square right on that.